Hello, and welcome back to the Where Does It Come From podcast, where we explore all things relating to stuff and their impacts on people and planet. Today, I'm really lucky to have with me Laura Cave, who is the founder and director of Just Trade jewellery brand, and also heavily involved in the British Association of Fairtrade Shops and Suppliers, which is a bit of a mouthful, so we call it BAFTS. Anyway, I first of all want to start with getting Laura to explain to us all about what she does in her many roles and telling us about herself. Over to you, Laura.
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. So nice to see you. Yeah, so basically I started Just Trade about 15 years ago. We're a jewellery and accessories company, and we work with fair trade projects in South America, India, and Vietnam. Um, and we now mainly wholesale, so we mainly sell to independent shops, quite a lot of museums and galleries. We do two main things. So we do like a core range, which is available to everyone, and then we do an awful lot of bespoke designs, particularly for the kind of museum gallery sector. So if somebody's got a specific exhibition about something, then we can work with them to develop a product range to go alongside that. And then with BAFTS, I've been on the board of BAFTS Fairtrade Network UK for 4 years now. And I did 3 years as chair of the organisation. So, which was really amazing opportunity, really interesting, and quite hard work. So
I can imagine. So you've got such a strong fair trade link, which is partly why I wanted to talk to you, because we've met so many times at various events and online as well with conferences and things, that your strong commitment. 15 years is such a long time to have been working on your brand, and for it still to be doing so well, and then on top of that getting involved with wider collaborative work. So fair trade's obviously really important to you, but can you pinpoint for me what got you started with Fairtrade? What was that thing that triggered you into it?
well, there's a couple of things. I was when I was thinking about this. I really clearly remember watching a documentary at school about sweatshops in and children being forced into making shoes, and that really stuck with me. And I was just like, "Oh my goodness, this is so wrong. This is not okay." And that always kind of stuck with me. I then went to university, and I was in really two minds as to, do I go down something like the kind of psychology route that potentially could be seen as a bit more useful, or do I go down what I really, really was passionate about, which was making things and creativity, and do jewellery design. And I went down the jewellery design route, and I was really sort of like, how can is there a way to use this in a way that could be impactful and be useful in people's lives, rather than just making some pretty jewellery. So when I was between my first and second year, I studied jewellery at Birmingham, and between my first and second year, I went to India, and I did a little bit of travelling and a bit of kind of painting a school type thing, and a bit of voluntary work. And I met these two arts graduates who'd both done textile design, and they were working with a fair trade project in Mumbai. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do. If I can do something like this, it would be amazing. And the following year, I had like one last summer holiday. So I was like, right, so I'm going to see if I can do some voluntary work. Maybe I could go and do something in India. So I got in touch with the organisation that they'd worked for. I said, oh, please, can I come and volunteer for you? And they said no. So I was like, oh, okay then. And they said, but we've heard about a project in Peru. Maybe they'd be interested. So I contacted them. I just said, look, I haven't got any experience working in Peru, but I'm willing to come and help if I can be of any help. And so I went to Peru very naively, didn't speak a word of Spanish, just got on a plane, went for a month to volunteer with this project, and found the most amazing country full of the most amazing chatty people who were so friendly, loved a story, and had a propensity to be late. And I was just like, I am at home. This is where I should be.
Yes, I think I'm
And
Peruvian.
Yeah. And I just kept going back. So I kept just trying to fund my volunteering habit by selling cheese at Sainsbury's, and then I started lecturing and doing various things and just kept volunteering. Um, I think what I found most amazing was, although I felt like I had something maybe that I knew that could be useful, I also felt I learned so much from those experiences. And what I really enjoyed was the collaboration. So it was kind of like, you know something, I know something, and together we can do something better that we wouldn't be able to do either on our own. So it wasn't really about me kind of going, these are my designs, make them. It was about, okay, what are the systems that you're already using? How can we improve on that? What techniques do you know? How can we kind of like change that a bit? How can we make that more suitable, more commercial? So it was all things like that. So I absolutely loved it. And I kept going sort of like for 2 months, for 3 months. And then while I was doing that, I got introduced to the Hope Jewellery Project. They were super well organised and set up and had some really great skills, but they didn't have a route to market. And again, it was just one of those things where I could just see the potential that actually between us we could do something. So that's why I started Just Trade. So that was 15 years ago, but I'd been volunteering in Peru for maybe 5 years before that.
Amazing.
So
Amazing. I mean,
yeah,
I think back when I started, where does it come from? 2012-ish, and I did another business before that. But back then, there wasn't really that many people. There was, I'm not saying there wasn't anyone, because there were some amazing leaders, weren't there, in the field, for People Tree, for fashion, and obviously Body Shop and other brands, a lot of the fair trade brands like Tradecraft, but it wasn't anywhere near as mainstream now. So it must have felt a bit like you were pushing a snowball up the hill or something. Is that a terrible metaphor? But you know what I mean, in trying to work in that kind of way, because businesses weren't used to working in that kind of way.
I think what I kind of come across more often is there were sort of two main ways of doing business. There was these are the products that people are already making. These are artisans. These are kind of like their traditional skills, and it would be like, do you want to buy them? Or it was kind of like, these are, for the want of a better word, Western designed products. And we're looking for ethical manufacture, and we want to give opportunities. And I guess what I've always wanted to do, and probably because of my background, come at it in a way where it's, I come from a design training background. So it's always been about, okay, how do we use the design process and how do we collaborate together to make something that, we couldn't do if it was me just designing or you just making and designing yourself. Because actually there's a joint shared knowledge that means that we can do something bigger and better than if it was just sort of like individuals working alone.
Yeah, no, I
So I
couldn't.
guess that's, I think, and I think there is a little bit more research now into co-creative design, and definitely that is a lot of the conversations that have been going on with Fairtrade recently about sort of the authenticity of voice and how do you respect kind of different people's perspective, and they're like being really careful about cultural appropriation and all those kind of things. So snowballs, hills, probably, but I've just really just felt it's been a massive privilege to work with people I work with. I always go and like stay with families that I work with, and I just think it's a privilege to be invited into people's lives like that. And it's not what you would get if you stayed in a luxury hotel and went and saw Machu Picchu. You get to know people and actually the real stuff that's going on. And I've got such dear friends in in Peru and Ecuador and India now. So I'm super
No,
lucky.
no, I agree with you. I think hearing your story like this, obviously we've chatted lots of times before, but it shows me the similarities between us because firstly, I kind of got into this back at school and things like that because I was doing some voluntary work at school. But the thing that really triggered me was again a documentary. So it shows you these documentaries they have a strong effect. And I think it was Red Nose Day or something. And there was this woman from sub-Saharan Africa. I can't remember exactly which country, and they interviewed her about what's it like living there, and it was all slightly, high level, I suppose. And this lady said, it is just chance, that you were born there and I was born here. And that really strongly affected me. I remember her face so clearly even now because it's like, gosh, that is so true. It's just complete fluke about where we're born and the opportunities we get in life. And it's so unfair. And history has made it so unfair that it's only about trying to do something to remedy that and to work with people. But the second thing I think that we've really got in common strongly is the collaboration side of thing, which does follow from the first point, getting to know the actual people, getting to build those connections with the actual people. I mean, I'm exactly the same when I go to India. I've stayed with my one of my suppliers. We become really strong friends over time, and it's all about great. We can meet more people. We can find out more about these people and how they live. And that's kind of what I think is important about these kind of businesses of Just Trade and Where Does It Come From, is the people who are buying from us can also build those connections in a way because they get to find out a lot more about who is involved in making their products, and that must make you love the item more, I hope.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think whenever I ask anyone who makes any of our products, I'm like, so if I say, what do you want to say to the people who buy this product? And they say, I want them to know that I made it with lots of love.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I'm like, yeah, it's true. And actually, I really believe there's a power in craft, and I believe there's a really strong power in being able to make something and make something well that is really kind of nourishes the soul. And I think it's even better if someone knows that someone wants to buy that because they love it, not because they feel sorry for you. And
Oh,
actually,
definitely. Yeah,
I think
trade, not aid.
I think that's and I think that's the thing about doing good design and good quality products is people want to buy them because they love the product. And how nice is it that you've made something that someone wants to buy? I think I would hate it if someone said, oh, if I made my own work, someone was like, oh, the poor short person from Birmingham, maybe we need to buy something from her because she probably needs some dental work. I mean, I hate that. Like, don't buy it because I'm short.
Oh, I
Buy
love that.
it.
Love that picture. That's
Buy
going to
it
be
because
in
you
my
like
mind.
what I've done and you respect my work. Don't buy it because you feel sorry for me.
Yeah, that is such a good way of putting it. Absolutely. You've got me
And I
giggling now.
think it's when you put it like that, you kind of go, oh, actually, yeah, no,
Cringe, yeah. 'Cause it's not even just about feeling sorry for them, it's just that other thing, isn't it? I must admit, one thing I love doing, I absolutely love doing, is sharing back photos of people wearing things. So I'm always sending off, it's the beauty of technology, especially these days with WhatsApp. You can send back a picture that a customer sent me of them wearing something to the people who've actually made it. And you can only hope that that's something that gives them joy, that they know that their creation is being loved.
oh my goodness, that is the best thing. That's one of the first things I always do whenever I go, which has been a while since I've been to Peru and Ecuador and India because of
Can't think why.
I don't know if there's something going on. Don't know if you heard, um, but the first thing I do is I go, this is your work in the shop, and this is your work being worn, and this is, and but I think I'm often showing people here like, oh, here's a picture of Lisette who made your pendant. So I need to show Lisette, here's a picture of Nancy who's wearing your pendant.
Yeah,
And that's just so exciting.
it
And
is. It is.
because again, if it was my work, well, even now, if I see someone on the train wearing any Just Trade earrings or something, I just want to follow them and go, do you know who made your
Yeah.
earrings? I know who made your earrings.
The same. I know when we did our African tunic project a couple of years ago, and obviously they're quite leery, so I shouldn't say that word. They're quite bright and cheerful, so you can always spot someone wearing them.
Yeah.
And there's a few people, especially around our local area, who wear them. And when I see them in a shop, and Lucy, who's our product manager, she's quite often sends me photos that she's snapped in a shop of someone wearing it. We're both like, ooh, so some are
I know
great.
it's the best thing. It's the absolute best thing. And I also, what I really like doing is every time I go to a different country, I take everyone a present from one of the other
Hmm.
projects. So if I go to Peru, I take them all a pair of earrings made by the ladies that we work with in India.
Lovely.
And then that is amazing because then I show all the ladies in Peru, here's the ladies in India who made them, and then we do swap photos, and everyone gets really super interested. And they go, "Oh, I really like their clothes, and are they growing rice in the background? And what's the food?" And I've got this one girl this set who is amazing, lives in Peru, and she's called her daughter Priyanka, which is a really Indian name.
Oh,
And her dream is to come with me to India so that we can do some training together. And yeah, I'm totally going to make that happen, but it might take a few years.
I'm just going to explode. Yeah, I'll edit that out. Don't worry.
Yeah.
As you finish talking, that's so exciting. I absolutely love that, and sharing across the cultures is an absolutely fascinating one, isn't it? It's a really
Mm.
interesting idea because it's not just sharing between the producers and the customers; it's actually across the producers, which is fabulous, really.
I
Well,
think
well
it's
done
really
for that.
I think it's really interesting because there's so much that we all have in common. So much that we all have in common. And yet the differences are also really interesting. I always think that I find it really interesting when I'm like, okay, what's weird about English people?
So much.
So much. And basically, everyone just says to me, "I can't believe you're English because you're so short."
Oh
It
goodness.
always comes back to being short.
I always feel incredibly tall. I'm quite average height. I'm 5'5", and when I go to India, I always feel massively tall. I went to a wedding of one of our producer's brothers, and it's this huge, great wedding, and I just felt so tall and like I stuck out like a sore thumb, actually.
It is quite weird. Yeah, Ruth, who's 5'5" and works for us, when we look at the photos, she's like head and shoulders above everybody else. Whereas I'm just normal. It's brilliant. I love it.
Oh, right. Anyway, so we both come from this very collaborative starting point, and
Mm.
it's so lovely to hear about what you're doing. And we won't talk about shortness and tallness anymore. But apart from height, no, what do you look for when you're identifying groups of artisans to work with? How do you grow your artisan groups?
So, well, basically the same as the way that we started. So we don't really start with a group who can make our designs. We start with a group of people who need work.
Mm.
So every single group we start with, it's can we build something with them together? Can we have a long-term relationship? And can we add value to what they're already doing? So with the initial group in Peru, it was looking at what skills they already have, what skills do we have that we can teach, what skills can they teach each other,
Mhm.
what type of work is needed. So in Peru, for example, all the work that is needed is part-time. So people don't want to work full-time. They've got families, they want to be able to work around them. Actually, what they're trying to avoid is having to work in a nice house 2 hours journey away where they're
Mhm.
housekeeper and cleaner and work 8 hours a day, travel for 4 hours a day, and don't ever see their families. What they
Mhm.
want is stuff that's more local that they can do to fit around their families. And then we also look at what materials are available locally, and also obviously think about who's the end customer. And all of these different aspects feed into the process and the design and the price point. Um, so any group everything has kind of happened organically. We've been approached sort of like, with India, it was, we were approached by someone who said, oh, we've set up this group in rural Tamil Nadu. We've done tailoring training, but actually there are loads of electricity cuts all the time. So they've been trained to how to use sewing machines, but actually half the time they can't use them.
Oh.
And could you teach some jewelry skills? And so that's how and in India we started with like 8 people, 8 women, and we've now got like 30 there, and it's connected to a refuge. And the women that we work with there, loads of them have just not been given any opportunity. They're from like the lower castes, and a lot, the state that we work in, there's big history of girls being married off very young, even though it's now illegal. But that causes all sorts of issues and problems, and means that they don't finish education and stuff. So it's sort of, it's been word of mouth. It's always been, can we work long term? Can we add value? And is there something that is not going to be a conflict with anything else that we already work with? So we probably wouldn't kind of keep taking on lots of groups that have the same skills, but or use the same materials, but try and look for sort of the uniqueness within that context. So, for example, in Ecuador, we work with lots of people who produce tagua, use tagua to produce jewellery, which is a nut, a seed from the jungle, which is incredible material, sometimes known as vegetable ivory, because it looks a bit like ivory, but actually it's not at all. It's super sustainable, environmentally friendly, and actually was used really widely in the button industry before the invention of plastics.
Okay.
And seen a bit of a resurgence in the last few years. So in Ecuador, we specialize in working with groups who use the tagua, but try and work with them to develop products that are different. I think what you often see in many contexts where there is a lot to do with tourism is you see one stall that sells figurines of unicorns next to another stall that sells figurines of unicorns, next to another stall that sells figurines of unicorns, and you go, well, which one? And then it becomes about price. It doesn't become about
exactly
anything other than price, and it becomes a race to the bottom. Who can make it cheapest? So then you make it cheaper, then you make it worse. So I'm really passionate about working with groups to help them develop products that they're not competing on price. We're making handmade products, we're going to make them well, and we're going to compete on uniqueness of design and professionalism. So yeah, I don't know if that actually answers your question.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I think the collaboration thing again is so important. It's some interesting points there about the customer. And I was talking on a previous podcast to somebody about this thing we've had maybe over the last 20 years, 30 years perhaps, in UK Western culture, about the customer always being right, and most product development coming from being driven by that customer and what they feel that they need. So whether it be unicorns or whatever, and it's the same with clothing, exactly the same with clothing. Whereas in fact, the supply chain covers a huge number of people, and why should the customer's viewpoint be the only one that matters just because they've got the purse? And people might say that's a bit naive, but I actually think it's about collaboration across the whole thing and almost educating people across the whole thing. So you're also educating the customer about why they don't want to just be buying unicorn statues all the time.
Yes. Yeah. I also think I think it's about acknowledging what the zeitgeist is, what the trends are, but not jumping on the trend bandwagons, because actually it's not about fast fashion. It's about, and particularly with jewelry is quite a different world to the fashion world anyway. I admire you for working in that context.
I'm not sure I do.
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
But about looking at kind of just things that actually you might not know if you've never traveled outside of your village. Like, why would you know that statement earrings are really fashionable in London? You wouldn't know that because you don't know what London's like. So how do you work with people to develop products? And that's the bit where you know something,
yes,
and between you will kind of like teach and learn together and develop together. I think what's been interesting the last couple of years or so, I've been working on another project called Making Links, which is about teaching the design process. And last week I was running a workshop in the mountains in Ecuador, obviously on Zoom. And I know, shame, right? And I invited two, Christina, who I work with in Peru and been working with for 15 years, Magdalena, who works in Quito in Ecuador, who's been exporting products for 20 years now, and I've been working with for 10. and we were working with some women who use this beautiful technique where they basically make fibre out of aloe vera
Oh, wow.
leaves and do kind of this basket making technique. Incredible, so much potential. I'm super excited about it, but they haven't actually managed to get things to market yet. But what was amazing was Christina and Magdalena were able to go, oh yes, no, we had that problem where actually everything kept coming out the wrong size, and these are the systems that we used. And just, I think there's something so valuable about that sharing of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm super passionate about.
Yeah, no, I think that's so interesting, isn't it? And also, maybe it doesn't seem quite so, I don't know, I want to say patronizing, but it's probably not the right word. But if it's coming from people from their own culture who've done the same kinds of things from where they are, then maybe they can understand that a bit more, can relate to that a bit more. So really, you're bringing in experts that have even more in common with the people that they're talking to, which I think is really valuable.
I also think it's really important for me that they don't go, oh, you're the designer from the West, because actually it's more, I'm another cog in the system,
Yeah.
and everyone has got something valuable to bring. And because I went to art college, I know some stuff that you don't know because you didn't go to art college, but all that stuff is teachable and learnable. All the things are learnable. It's like design is not a magical process. You can
No,
learn how to
exactly.
design.
And I've always been very much the same. I mean, I didn't go to art college or anything, but when I'm working with our groups, our social enterprises particularly in India, I know that they know far more than I do about fabrics and what works well in terms of, what dyes work well with which fabrics and what you should sew in which way or whatever. And as you say, I can just bring in information. Like I might say, for example, a few years ago, we wanted to do something about bees, in relating to the sort of Save the Bees campaigns. And then we spent quite a lot of time on working with bees and trying to choose, but they had so many really good design ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. But then similarly, we decided to do something with teapots because we were working with a charity called the Teapot Project. They didn't really know what a teapot was because their idea of a teapot was completely different. So I had to send them pictures of sort of Western teapots.
Yeah, no, it's weird. Some things translate and some things don't.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. I love the scarves. They came out really well, but they had to base it on what I'd sent them because I suppose their idea of a teapot is big and gold and completely different, much nicer probably than what we have. Yeah, I was going to go back to, you talked about what the artisans were looking for in terms of work, which I thought was a really interesting point. So I want to just touch on that because you talked about going to someone else's house 2 hours away to work as a domestic labourer, and I think that's a really key one. That it's about dignified livelihoods, isn't it? It's about the livelihoods that you actually want yourself, rather than saying, well, they've got work, so that's fine. Because I know you looking at the garment industry, which I obviously know a little bit more about than jewellery, where people have to actually leave their children in the rural areas with grandparents and then go to the city and live in horrible high-rise blocks and things like that, just to earn enough money to send back home again. And we might say, well, okay, they've got work, that's fine, isn't it? The garment industry works, but what kind of livelihood is that? How is that giving you any kind of dignity or self-respect?
I think it's to do with quality of life, and I think that family and friends and community is really important for all of us.
Yeah.
So I think being able to work in a way that means that you actually get to spend time with your family and your friends and in your community is it's important to me. So and I know it's really important to everyone that I work with. In India it's slightly different. We actually have a production unit that the project we work with has a production unit. It's not our production unit. It belongs to Flowering Desert. That's the name of the project. And actually, the way that things are set up there are that there's a women's refuge and children's refuge on site. The children get taken to school in the bus. The bus stops in the village, picks up all the women who then get free travel to work, and
Lovely.
then at the end of the day takes the women back and picks the children up. So it's really economical, and actually the women get to work together in community. for a
lovely.
shorter period of time. They work for 6 hours rather than an 8-hour day. And so they still get time with their families that they want, but are able to learn a skill and spend time with other women and
That's
be really
fantastic.
supportive of each other in all aspects of life, because I
Mm.
think that's what we all need, isn't it?
Yes, and well, it's also we worked a lot with women in rural areas of India who through the marriage agreements or just through the communities that they're in, they don't get to leave the house very often without,
Mm,
male escort and that kind of thing. So part of the point of the cooperatives that we work with is you can't enforce change so quickly, but what you can do is gradually do it. And one thing I particularly liked was the idea that they say to the families, well, the women can work from home, they can be earning a bit of money, we'll install a weaving loom or a spinning charcoal in their home so that they can actually work there. But then of course when it came to they'd finished their created their fabrics, they then were mandated to bring that to the cooperative themselves and be paid themselves, and the families were not overly keen because obviously this wasn't something that they did, but because there was money at the end of it, the women could then go there, and that widened their horizon just that little bit. And it's those gradual steps to making things a little bit different for some of the more vulnerable people.
it is, it's very interesting, I think, in terms of like um what do you accept as, okay, this is just
Mm.
cultural, um and what is like, actually no, this we need to shift this a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I think when it becomes about equality, particularly women's equality, a lot of the communities that we work in, very patriarchal,
Yeah.
uh, machismo society, and actually being able to help women make decisions for themselves and have a bit more autonomy about where their income is coming from and what decisions they can make for their
Hmm.
children is really, really valuable.
It is, and also increasing the respect. I mean, once they become a earning member of a family group, they suddenly automatically got more respect within
Mm-hmm.
that group.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely.
about changing it. I mean, there's a very interesting lady you may remember from the Ethical Brands for Fashion Revolution conference last year, Madhu, who
Mm-hmm.
is based in a rural community near Jaipur. And she wasn't supposed to work, even though she'd been educated to a very high level. And what she did then was in her local village that she got moved to as part of her marriage. I mean, she's an amazing woman. She set up an embroidery unit, and then of course it was all voluntary, but then of course when they saw that this was actually something that could make money, she was then able to turn that into work for many of the women within the village and get international clients for their embroidery. So and then suddenly they become a valuable part of that community, more valuable part of that community than they were, more respected anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
No, it is. It is. I really admire some of these women are just so awe-inspiring in terms of their guts to just sort of challenge things and work within the bounds of what they have, but to make things better for their fellow women and next generations as well, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I think there's an awful lot of investment in the future and their children's future, which
Mm.
is really just to see that resilience and drive. I'm going to send my children to university. I'm going to make
Yeah,
sure they get a really good education. It makes such a difference when you kind of sometimes sit and think, oh my goodness, I didn't really like doing that at school. Like, what a privilege to have an
I
education.
know. I know exactly. I say that to my kids all the time. You can't believe how lucky you are. But then I remember my mum saying it to me, and I probably listened about as much as they listened, to be really honest. Uh, anyway, talking about some of the people, you must have a favorite. Do you have like a favorite project or a favorite customer or a favorite group that you've worked with?
I think they're all really different. I love them all. I guess I started in Peru, so I do feel very, very at home in Peru. Um, and so, and the project in Peru, Hope Jewellery, yeah, we've been like 100% committed to, yeah, for 15 years. So I do always love going there. But equally, I really love going to Ecuador. And in Peru, we work in Lima, in the capital. In Ecuador, I work with my wonderful colleague Wilma, who's got, again, loads of experience working in Fairtrade. Incredible woman, and we travel around quite a lot. So Lima's quite a lot of sort of staying in the same place, which is amazing. Means you get a bit more time with people, and you can do a little bit more sort of longer training. Every time I go, we try and learn a new technique that can then influence design. So that's always just really nice to have that kind of long-term sort of bit more time with people. Mm-hmm. In Ecuador, it's much more sort of like overnight bus journey, 2 days of workshop, another overnight bus journey, earthquake, another overnight bus journey. So it's a different pace, and I think I would like to spend more time in those places to get to know people a bit better. And India is wonderful. Again, it's rural, it's completely remote and cut off, completely different to Lima, which is just full on noise the entire time. So everywhere's different. I think yeah, it's always about the people though. Definitely, it's always about and I think the solidarity and the friendship. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's really interesting. And what about customers? You've obviously done quite a few business commissions. So what kinds of customers do you really love working with? Just in case there's some possible future ones listening in.
Oh no, well, we love working with all customers, obviously.
Of course.
But I think we've really found it really enjoyable working in museum, gallery, heritage sector, and also charity, working with some charities as well. I think I really like working with people who their main it's not just about selling products for the sake of selling products. It's about making money to invest into a charitable cause or raising awareness or education. So that's what you get when you're working with these cultural institutions. So we've got some customers who have just been so unbelievably loyal for so long that we're eternally grateful to, like the Imperial War Museums, who have been buying our crocheted poppies. The first year they bought 80. They said, "Oh, could you do a poppy?" I was like, "Oh, I think we could do a poppy." We did 80. I was so pleased with an order for 80 poppies. And year on year, we've been getting orders for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, which
that's fabulous.
Just meant so much more. We can offer more work to more people. And so that's been a really long-term collaboration, we've been working with St Paul's Cathedral for years as well, who have just been really inspirational in the way that they have embraced working with Fairtrade groups and producers, and really trying to kind of communicate the ethics and the value of Fairtrade. So yeah.
Wonderful. Now the poppy story is lovely, really nice one, because that's a kind of commodity item, but one that is going to hold its value through years. But then having that depth of story about what the poppy means in terms of its its cultural meaning, but then linking that up with actually doing some good at the same time, I think is a fantastic thing.
It's really nice actually, because we work in some of the poppies are made in a place called Ayacucho, which was really badly affected by a time of terrorism and troubles in Peru, and a lot of the women there have been really affected by kind of internal conflict. And so actually having that link and telling that story and the remembrance aspect is really interesting.
Yeah, it chimes really nicely, doesn't it? So obviously hearing all your stories, I might change that bit. Hearing all your stories, Laura, you can really tell about your deep commitment to fair trade, but then you widened your commitment to fair trade by becoming the chair of the BAFTS forum. So what made you decide to do that?
No, yeah, what on earth is a better way of putting it. So we've always, as Just Trade, we've always found a great value in being part of the BAFTS community. I think, again, it's about collaboration, about shared information. And yeah, again, some of our dearest friends we've met through Fairtrade. And so we've always been quite an active member of the BAFTS community, and and we're just trade. We really are quite sociable. So we have been very keen to organise kind of get-togethers, and I do just think that actually sharing information, I think it's quite specific and sometimes quite random, the situations that we're working in, and I feel like it's just really comfortable, particularly as well as we're often quite very small organisations, don't have loads of people working for us, and actually to meet up with people who have potentially gone through similar things and have had the same issues with customs or whatever, or everything coming over the wrong colour, or
Yep.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or it's just really comforting, and also really we've been able to share ideas and knowledge and information with so many people, so that's why we were always been quite involved in BAFTS, and I've always found the conferences really inspirational, and always been tried to be sort of willing to share if I've learned something through my mistakes that might be useful for someone else, so they can don't have to make the same mistakes as me, then I'm really happy to do that. So I gave a talk at BAFTS conference in New York, and I was then accosted by Diane from Lancashire, who was former chair of BAFTS, who said, I really think it's time for you to step up, Laura. And I don't know if you've met Diane, but you don't.
I can't remember. I've been to some of the conferences. So I managed to avoid being pigeonholed, or otherwise buttonholed.
She just said, you clearly have some knowledge, and I think it's time for you to step up. And I was like, I don't think I do. And she's like, no, you've got some experience. So I thought, well, maybe it is. And actually, this could be, I felt like there was probably something that I could probably add value because of my background from a design point of view. I thought there was probably some potential. And so I agreed to join the board, and then I was very heavily involved in organising the conference for the following year in London.
That was a London one, yes, I remember. That was an excellent conference.
Yeah, and you did an excellent talk. I remember.
Was that? Yeah, I did do an excellent talk. I did a talk anyway. But yes, no, I'd forgotten that. I was sadly just thinking about the delicious lunch, I must admit.
Yeah, no, well, it's delicious lunch, delicious dinner, excellent talk. No, it was it was very well attended and really great. Great conference. And it was just before that, actually, the rest of the board basically said, we didn't have a chair at the time. We had a year without a chair, and they just sort of said, oh, we think you should take this on. So I said I'd do it for 3 years. So I've just finished my 3 years, and I'm on the board for another 2. But oh my goodness, it's been such a privilege being part of this organisation and community, and yeah, not without its challenges. I wasn't really anticipating a pandemic.
Yes.
But actually, I mean, there are 3 main ideas around kind of BAFTS. One is the idea of accountability, that you are accountable for what you do, and it's through a peer assessment, and actually I think that really helps. It's really helped us to strive to do better in our business and fair trade and our ethics and our motivation, and improve the standards. And they encourage you to set ongoing improvement targets. So it's not just about, I tick all the boxes on fair trade. It's about, this is an ongoing commitment, an ongoing journey, and we can keep getting better. And that sense of community that I was talking about, and kind of peer-to-peer kind of support and networking, and just kind of like being able to phone someone and go, oh my goodness, this has happened. Has this ever happened to you? What did you do? I can't fill in the customs form. And then inspiration. I just think, again, as you were saying, you've met so many inspiring people through the work that you do, that actually sometimes you just kind of go, I just want more of that. And so yeah, it's been a privilege. It's not been the most straightforward, but it has been fantastic being part. And I'm delighted to still be part of the board for the next couple of years. And then I think it's probably time for me to go and across someone else and say,
oh God, I keep my head down. No, I think
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, and I think about the collaboration side is really important. But certainly, I'm running a small business which is very different from most small businesses. So like local networking groups are great and I go to them when we're able to, but it's not the same because they're not looking for the same impacts as we're looking for. We're looking for impacts on all of our stakeholders, which include very much include the people making things and people further back in the supply chain. So for us it's farmers. I want farmers to have benefit, even though I probably won't meet most of the farmers, but I want to
Mhm.
have all of the people having that impact. And then the environment, which is a very nebulous thing to have as a stakeholder. Unfortunately, more people are getting concerned with getting involved with that, but finding a group of people that have those kind of similar goals, impact goals, and being able to talk to them about nitty-gritty things like customs forms and what happens when things go wrong, but also it helps you up your game, doesn't it? Because you see what other people are doing, you see how other people are thinking, and together you can almost, I don't know, get everybody growing that little bit more because we're sharing information and knowledge, but also aspiration, I think.
Definitely, definitely. I do think kind of, yeah, being able to share information, share stories, work together, I think definitely is the way forward.
And there's a lot of shops in your network as well, isn't there? And obviously I've got close links with our local Ipswich Fairtrade shop,
Yeah,
and I think it's great for them to then have that link with other shops and they can be comparing notes and then being part of something bigger, because otherwise, I mean, those ladies, Margaret and Anne, they know, I think they're totally inspirational and aspirational, because they've been running this for 30 years. They've been doing this
I
and
know.
they've got so much knowledge, and I've asked them to be on I've asked Margaret to be on the podcast and she's like, oh no, I don't really want to do that. They're just so modest and that they don't shout about the amazing work that they do. There must be other shops out there who have similarly been working for tens of years doing this amazing work, and they're sort of handing a future on to the next generation, I think.
I think what I found really inspiring about a lot of the bath shops is the amount of knowledge about product, about where things come from, about environmental issues. And I've seen, when I first, I mean, I used to go around and visit quite a lot of bath shops anyway to show them new products and things. But every single time I've been to any bath shop, I've come away energized, normally with basically most of my groceries for the next week
Yeah.
and my birthday presents. But just not only have they got the knowledge about fair trade, but the kind of environmental impact on products, but that they are really heart and soul of communities. And actually, there are sort of there are bath shops that have like attached to kind of conference centres or attached to cafes um, or kind of end up selling tickets for like the local festival
Mm-hmm.
or work as the cashback place in the village because nowhere else does cashback. And yeah, just um, the times I've spent in bath shops have just been really precious in terms of knowing how integral they are to the local community.
Mm.
And again, it's about making those connections, isn't it? Those international connections at a really local level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's just so important, and I think they're so undersold as well. They undersell themselves. I don't mean financially, but in terms of the benefit that they have. Because at the Ipswich shop, I know that all the workers there, apart from I think the Saturday person and the manager, are volunteers, and they're a community of people who get together. Maybe they're people who live on their own or they've retired or something, and then they're giving back, but also they're getting something. They're getting that feeling of community and being part of something bigger. So I just think it's so special.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it really is. It's really precious.
Oh, good. Well, so you've led your organisation through a pandemic, the BAFTS and Just Trade. That must have been quite an interesting one. We've all had unforeseen challenges and uh, I suppose benefits in some ways with the technology and being able to link more globally through the pandemic. I have to find a plus point in there somewhere. But I suppose the important question really going forward is, how do we grow this? How do we grow fair trade? How do we change the culture and get the government more on board and more businesses on board as well?
Well, I think it's more of the same, really. I think it's collaboration and working together. So, in terms of what BAFs are doing, we're really actively trying to work more with other like-minded organisations, so like the WFTO, World Fair Trade Organisation, Fair Trade Foundation, Tradecraft Exchange, Trade Justice Movement, Ethical Hour. Obviously, we had Sean speak at our conference. Extinction Rebellion, again, inviting other really key players within this whole kind of conversation to be the inspiration and join kind of the community. So yeah, we've kind of collaborated with Scottish Fair Trade Forum, Fair Trade Wales, Social Enterprise UK, those type of organisations, about kind of just being a force for good and a different way of doing trade, really. And then I think there's also definitely, so I think there are some organisations that obviously have a lot more resources and bigger clout. BAFTS is quite a small organisation, and quite unique in its remit, in its makeup. But I think by partnering with other organisations and to give that unique voice, for example, the Trade Justice Movement do a lot of lobbying and political stuff that, to be honest, goes a lot above my head. But we are part of that, and they are the experts within that particular forum and make sure that they get the say on government white papers and things. So I think it's really important to add weight to that type of thing, and things like Social Enterprise UK and Living Wage Foundation. And then I think is also one of the things that I've tried to start doing, which building on the work of former boards and chairs, is kind of try and get BAFTS a little bit more mainstream. So for example, we sponsored the Gift of the Year ethical category over this last year, and trying to get more links with other trade organisations that can get this whole message of actually a people and planet centred focused business a bit more mainstream. And I think there's an appetite for it, particularly after the pandemic. I think there's more than ever there is an appetite. I think we've seen a lot of difficulties. I think we have seen a lot of kindnesses over the last couple of years, and long may it last. And I think we have seen a lot of people really actually start to think, okay, where is my money going, and how can I make small decisions with my money that are going to have bigger impacts than lining the pockets of a multi-billionaire.
I think it's interesting actually, because one thing that I suppose I sort of subconsciously railed against in the beginning was the shop local, and not because I'm anti-shop local, but I was seeing that as something that was hitting back against fair trade. But actually, I think I was totally wrong. I think shop local actually gets people thinking more about where their products come from, and then it might not come from your local area, or maybe it might have been finished in your local area. But if you actually know the whole supply chain, the whole transparent supply chain of where something's come from, that's so much better than some faceless, nameless big corporation that's not going to tell you the information. So I think shop local actually has a really big part to play in fair trade in a weird sort of way.
Oh, definitely. And it comes back to the fair trade shops that I was saying, like actually these fair trade shops that are like heart of the community, the local community, but having global impact. And I think a lot of our very dear, lovely customers are independent boutiques and local shops, and they have a relationship with their customers, the local people who come in regularly, who are kind of keeping up with, what's new in Just Trade, and what's the set making this year, and I just love all those connections. I think it's
exactly
brilliant.
So shop local is really more about shop knowingly, isn't it? Shop I don't know, that was a better word, but it's not just about everything's got to be grown, produced, everything in your local area, because that's not possible anyway, because if you want something made of certain minerals, you're never going to get them from the UK. But so it's part of a bigger pattern. So I suppose I see it more as a sort of end of facelessness. It's a community again, back to that word again, isn't it? A global community, but with a local front end, I suppose, for people to go to. So
I think I always find it really interesting. I think the fashion revolution where it's sort of who made my jewelry, who made my clothes, asking that question and having artisans come back to you saying, I made your jewelry, I made your clothes. And I've always sort of been really conscious about how I explain that to people who I'm artisans, who are some partners and makers who I've been asking to hold a sign saying I made your jewelry. And I really just simply explain it like, lots of people think that things are made in factories.
Yeah.
And actually, if they know that you made this, that's really interesting and exciting, and we get to show your skill. And then they go, oh yeah, we need to make sure that people understand who makes our products, and that we are really proud of what we make, and it's made with love.
Definitely. But interesting. Again, back to the woman I mentioned earlier, Madhu from India. She said to me, she gets her embroiderers to hold up the sign, and they say, well, why am I holding this up? I don't even understand what it means. And it's more a part of, they want to be part of, have a voice. So she says, I don't just want to be given a sign to hold up. If you're involving us in this, then we want to be involved in everything about the design process. Don't just turn up and help expect us to hold a sign up. So I thought it was quite interesting one. It's more, it's that, yeah, bringing them more on board generally, rather than just like you said right at the beginning. It's not about these are our designs, you make them. It's about getting that whole collaborative process together and then being far more of a part of that, not just something at the very far end who gets their prices forced on them and their designs forced on them and everything else. So it's fascinating. Now I'm very well aware that you and I could talk about this for probably 3 or 4 days without stopping for breath. But I think really I'll bring it to an end there. I think the point is to say well done for all your amazing work with BAFTS and with the all of your Fairtrade work with Just Trade. And it's been so interesting having an hour to sit down with you and talk about your journey, which some of it I didn't know anyway. So that's quite interesting about all your different trips around South America and India and everything. I can just imagine you with your backpack on, off you go. But yeah, no, so it's been really interesting to spend the time, and it's so lovely to talk about collaboration and how important that is. So I'm really hoping that the people who are listening to this will really get a taste for the collaborative side and go and find out where their jewellery came from. Go and check out Just Trade and hopefully buy some of your beautiful products. So Laura Cave, thank you so much for coming on to the Where Does It Come From podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to just have a chat, and yeah, I don't normally need much encouragement, and as you say, I think we probably could carry on for the next 3 days. So we'll resume this conversation at the conference next year.
Yes, hopefully in person.
And if anybody wants to know more about BAFTS, it's the BAFTS website is bafts.org.uk, and there's loads more information and links to all the fabulous BAFTS members who are all doing incredible work around the world and have fantastic products.
And is that conference going to be in the Wales Centre?
It's going to be in Wales. It's going to be at the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales. We're trying to get to Wales for 3 years. We are going to Wales.
Last year I was definitely coming to Wales, and then I obviously couldn't come to Wales because somebody started a global pandemic and spoiled it all. Never mind. We'll get there. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jo.
I've got to stop the recording. Hang on.